Good evening and welcome to the August 19th, 2021 Town of Smyrna Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order, and we'll begin tonight with prayer and pledge. If you'd stand, please.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather. We thank you for the leadership of our town. We pray that you would give us wisdom and discernment as we continue to keep our town great. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Turn this side.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Troy and Scott. Next item of business is citizens' comments. Do we have any at this time?
There are none at this time.
Okay, moving on. The minutes from the July meeting are in your packets. I assume everyone's had time to review those and look for any errors or edits that need to be done. If everything is in order, take a motion for approval.
I'll take a motion for approve.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The minutes carry. Now we'll move on to the next item, which is old business, carrying from last month's to now with Travis Webb. Mitch?
Yeah, this is once again a request that was heard before y'all last month. Just to refresh on this, this is a front setback variance of 12.5 feet, which would allow for an ice vending machine. Property request is located at 1205 South Large Street and has a lot size of approximately 2.07 acres. Property is zoned C2 general commercial and does have a minimum front setback requirement of 35 feet. The machine was discovered by a codes department on May 22nd, 2020, and then was discovered that the applicant failed to apply for a permit before installation of the structure. Staff did not receive plans prior to installation of the structure. Multiple attempts were made to have this issue resolved with the applicant since it was discovered, but no resolution has been made at this time. A plan was submitted by the applicant during the previous meeting during the July meeting that was drawn in January of 2021. This plan shows where the structure is located and a potential berm on site as well. A site plan was drawn 2 months later in March of 2021 showing where the structure could be located to meet all applicable setbacks and avoid any potential conflicts with the property layout. Staff also had an opportunity to take a look, and based on initial calculations, a relocation of the structure most likely would not have any effect of the detention pond due to the larger size of it as it was constructed based on compared to what was previously drawn on the plans. Section 7.080D of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for variances not involving special flood hazard areas, and they are detailed below. The board shall not grant a variance unless it makes findings based upon evidence presented as it follows. The particular physical surroundings, shape, topographic conditions of the specific property involved that would result in a particular hardship upon the owner as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict application of the ordinance were carried out must be stated. Staff finds that 1205 South Large Street is a fairly uniform shape, is relatively flat, and only approximately half of the property is being utilized currently at this time. The conditions upon which the petition for a variance is based would not be applicable generally to other property within the same district. Staff finds the property is consistent with many other C2 zone properties. Variance will not authorize activities in a zone district other than those permitted by this ordinance. Convenience commercial uses are allowed within the C2 district but are to adhere to any applicable setbacks. Financial returns shall not be considered as a basis for granting a variance. The property owner has not identified financial returns as a reason for requesting this variance. The alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property after the effective date of this ordinance. The applicant states the hardship present is a wet weather ditch located behind the machine. The placement of the machine was done by the applicant prior to applying for permits. Granting the variance request will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. Requests heard previously without permits being applied for generally are denied in which no hardship is found. Additionally, a site plan has been drawn to show where the structure could be relocated elsewhere on the property to meet setbacks, so if approved, it would grant special privileges to the applicant. Granting the variance is the minimum that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. Staff finds the requested setback variance is not the minimum that will make possible the reasonable use of the structure, as the applicant has alternative locations to locate the structure on the property while still meeting setbacks. The granting of the variance will not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the area in which the property is located. Staff finds that the variance should not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the area. The proposed variance will not impair adequate supply of light and air to adjacent properties, substantially increase the congestion in the public streets, increase danger of fire, endanger public safety, or substantially diminish or impair property values. Staff finds that the granting of this variance should not create any of the above effects. Number 10 is not applicable in this instance. And in conclusion, staff finds the lot is relatively uniform in shape with no significant topographic changes. There are many other locations on the property in which the structure could have been erected to meet setbacks, as shown on the site plan drawn in March of 2021. There have been other front setback variance requests presented to the board in previous years, and the requests have been denied due to lack of hardships. Once again, based on initial calculations which were conducted by Public Works and our engineers, the relocation of the structure would most likely not affect the detention pond. This is in part due to the larger constructed size of the berm compared to the one depicted on the plans. A couple pictures of the site. A lot of these pictures were shown last month, so this is a picture of the site. Looking at the machine, this is where that berm is located. You can see there is a little bit of a hump right here, going right in this general vicinity. This is where that drain is located. So it's taken from the corner. You have this structure is located on this side of the ditch, and berm goes right here in a 90-degree angle, and you have a little bit of a drainage area right here. It's another end of the pipe. So this is an aerial view that gives a better view of it. You can see right here where that berm is located, and the arrows are pointing to where that culvert is to allow for drainage. This is the plan that was discussed, that was drawn in March of 2020, which does show the location of where that structure could be erected in order to meet all the setbacks and avoid any conflicts with the drainage on the site. Right here is the location where that structure is currently existing, and this is where that proposed location could be at in order to be in compliance. That's all I got for you.
Thank you, Mitch. Does anyone have any questions for Mitch before we go to a public hearing? Okay, at this time, we will close the BZA meeting and open up for a public hearing for anyone that would like to speak for or against. If you'd state your name and address on the microphone, please.
703 Williamsburg Drive. First, I submitted some pictures to Mitch tonight to show on the big screen. Did you get those?
I have not had a chance to put them in the presentation, but based on the pictures I saw that were submitted outlining where the detention pond is at, it's in this general vicinity, and then they also have the picture in their packet that you submitted from last month showing.
Right, but I've
what
got
is
about
under.
10 to 12 additional pictures that would help Mark.
You can show them if you'd like to.
Okay. I say I got them on a flash drive. Do you want to upload them?
If you have them in hard copy, you can show them.
I can find it in my pocket.
Looks like we just got the one.
Now, that's the site plan from
Yeah.
Bobby and Judy's, which I've got the large copy here too.
Getting an error message on this.
size, file type.
They're just not?
No.
Okay, well.
That's all we got. Can't get to upload.
Can I bring these to you?
Sure.
This is showing the berm.
That was.
If you saw this one last time, the water.
Yeah.
This was just a reference, this is where the pipe is. It's in that area. It shows the berm right here, and then it turns. And then the pipe at the end, showing the drainage. Did I see that? Pipe at the end of the ditch, where it drains out towards Speedway. And it's on the big plans, or the site plan from Bobby's.
Everybody done with the pictures? Thank you.
I would just say, based on that, I mean, that there is a detention area behind it. It's on the blueprints from Huddleston and Steel.
From looking at what we've been presented with, which is this March 2021 plan, I think the issue at hand for BZA is we are here to say if a hardship exists where something cannot be located due to something with a topographic issue. And on this, my issue, this is just my discussion, and I'm having this with you before we even go to a meeting here, is this plan is showing that there is a location that meets all of the setbacks. And I know that drainage is something that can be redone. So the problem that I see for us, and that's what I'm asking you, is since drainage can be rerouted and things can be done, and this site plan does show it's gonna meet the setbacks, the problem for BZA and these guys, which we'll be deliberating in a moment, is there is not a hardship we have that we would normally approve. And we haven't before, because there has to be a reason why this location you have, there is the only one and the hardship. And that's our struggle, which is really why last month, this is why we put this off. We want to make sure we get this right, and we want to give time.
Right. That was to verify the detention area.
Yeah, we
Yes.
saw the original drawing and said, okay, well, there's a chance here that there's a hardship. Let's make sure we get this right and take a look at it. You know, with this drawing coming up showing that there is a place, that is the challenge we have, is we don't have a reason, a hardship for us to give approval. And what we do is just take the ordinance of the town and say, what the person need, does it meet a list of hardships we have? And because of this, just this document and staff reporting that it can be done, that puts us in a position, I don't know how we can approve it, because I don't see a hardship. And that's my question to you, because
I mean,
these
as
things.
far as the detention area, are we in agreement that there is one there?
Well, there's absolutely,
I
there's
mean, because I got
issues
plans
here.
where Huddleston Steel called out the detention area and how much cubic feet of water it holds. It's there for the runoff from Judy's.
According to this, though, it can be moved to meet the setbacks, which is the only issue we really have here, is that it's encroaching on your setback because of the location of that. But since drainage can be dealt with, and since you do have a place that it could be done on this site plan, that is our conundrum. That's our impassable
Well, the problem with
issue.
that spot there is that's on Judy's side. Where that entrance is going to be where her gravel entrance is. That's not what we agreed with her or Kim that owns the
But
property.
doesn't this say, Mitch, am I wrong that the site plan, this shows it does work on their property and it says it meets all of the setbacks? Is that true?
It is correct. It is all one property. It's all one parcel. You have an additional sheet in front of you that I've presented to you guys. It goes along with what I was mentioning, with what staff had a chance to look at, that we are acknowledging, we're not arguing about whether there's a detention pond. There is certainly one there. So that description, the layout that you have in front of you shows where it was originally designed and then where it actually is located in the site. And there's adequate size out there to allow for what currently is existing, even if the structure were to be relocated on the site.
And that's the issue that the board's gonna, that this is our issue. This is the problem we have to look at. We can only award a hardship with certain things. We can't just do it, even if we hear something that goes, well, I understand there's a drainage issue and that. It's not a hardship that we have that we're allowed to approve it, and that's our problem. Because you can deal with drainage and you can deal with location, and that's just where and this is why we've denied these consistently in the past. I mean, this is why, because we're not given it's a list of reasons on what the hardship is. So that's our problem, is I don't see where we have it. And that's why I wanted to have a discussion about
But
it.
when we left the last meeting, it was verify the detention area. I've got the verification right here.
Right. This shows, though, that
Now
it
you're
can
saying
be-
that we can move, we have
Well,
to move it?
because this shows it can be moved, because we had the setback issues based on the way you could get around the drainage, and this site plan does show that we can. That's what I can't get around personally, is this shows it can be done. And I wish this would have happened, I really wish this would have happened before you ever did it, because I hate for anyone to have trouble. That's not what we want at all. I just wish from the very get-go we would have known this and we could have figured out what's going on. But now that it's here, our problem is if we were to approve this, there is no hardship that we technically approve, and we deny these. And there's many people before you. And the other thing is it does give you special privilege we've denied other people. And usually for those, we don't do that. We stay very consistent to make sure we're fair to all parties. And on this, because I don't see a hardship, and this is just, if everyone has any other questions, Mr. Webb, my problem is I don't see where we can do it because of our list of what a hardship is. I don't see a topographic issue because it can be moved. Work has to be done. But typically when we deny one of these, work has to be done. Someone has to create berms or landscape buffer. They have to do something that's going to work in their situation because we cannot approve it. And it is no pleasure to not approve things. I know people have to do work. It's not, but we only have a certain amount of things that we can call a hardship. And this one, because of the existence of this right here, this shows that there is a way to do it.
Right, but if we move it there, it's gonna intrude on Judy's entrance to her storage buildings.
I think that's an issue, that's a codes issue or something beyond. We're just looking for a hardship that it can be done. Where it goes, and you said it is part of a property, right? This is all part of one property, so it's not,
y'all
it's
share
not
a
someone
parcel.
else's property.
We're renting that
correct?
space from her where we put it
Right.
currently. So for us to move it over there, she has a gravel entrance to her building and storage area, which, where that is marked up right there, we're right there on top of
But
that.
still, one parcel, you're just renting space out of that,
Right.
out of that property.
Right, and
So-
we're
but-
further down, the other
but to
existing
us,
site is on there.
That's a single property, it's still
Right.
one.
For us, this
property,
is a
so that
single
would be
property.
Something that
That's right.
you and your landlord, would have to work to figure out how to use the property appropriately.
And that was the point I was making. Based on the way it's shown to us, that's something, that's another different issue that doesn't have anything to do with what we can do. So. Anybody have any other questions or comments for Mr. Webb? Mr. Webb, do you have anything else you want to say?
I mean, the only, yeah. It's kind of just changed the whole situation because after the last meeting, it was based on, nothing about moving it was mentioned. It was, is there a hardship? Clearly, there's a hardship, there's a detention area there. And we've proven that.
Our staff report to us said that there are locations that would work. So that's the information we're given.
But that's not why we came to you as an appeal, we came for the hardship appeal.
We don't see the hardship unless, and I can't say that. I'm speaking only for myself. I don't know what the board thinks. When we open up the board meeting again, we'll see what everybody thinks. This was just to make sure we had a good conversation to talk
Oh, no,
about.
and I appreciate
to make
you.
sure we're not
Yes,
missing anything.
Yes, I appreciate that.
I actually don't know what these guys think.
I'm just saying there is runoff. The detention area was there for a purpose, for the runoff from Judy's. You can look at the elevation levels, and it goes from high to low, from left to right, towards Speedway. So we put it there. Again, it's going to intrude on her entrance, one, and two, there's going to be runoff issues and drainage issues. And even in that area where it's at, I've got pictures of where it's flooded there too. Not flooded, but detained water. So I mean, I just don't see where we can't leave it where it's at. I mean, it's 12 and a half feet.
It's because of the existence that this says it would meet setbacks and not affect drainage. And that's the information we're given. And these are guys that go look at that. And this is why, to answer your question, this is why I'm having that dialogue with
Right.
you. Because this is what I'm given. And based on that, I can't see a hardship. That's why I wanted to hear something more from you. As
But
it said,
who-
meets
who
all
went out-
setbacks and does not affect drainage.
Who went out and looked at it?
Tom, would you like to speak about this? So Tom Rose, engineer, director of public works, went out here to take a look at it, assessed the drainage situation with the site, and from that, we have a good, reasonable expectation that this will not affect with the relocation of it.
I don't know, they give them these
Yes.
little drawing. Okay, I'd gone out there earlier today and, because the berm that you see in the drawing above the kind of serpentine shaped berm was the design plan, but not the what actually got constructed. So what you see here is not what was actually constructed out in the field. If you went out there, you go out there and look at it, it's more of this L shape, and it's almost exactly right on the building setback line. I took a measuring wheel and I measured from the corner of the little berm to the other end. It's right at about 115 feet. I used my scale. I scaled it off on here and showing where this could be relocated. The ice machine and the parking could be relocated. It's the top of this berm is still approximately 8 feet away from where it could be relocated. So to put in the location shown on the plan would not, in my opinion, impact the drainage retention pond. It wouldn't need to be adjusted or moved at all.
Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Webb, I think the issue on this is we would not have approved the permit in the location you have currently. That's another problem. We wouldn't have. We would have had this
And I
conversation.
understand that.
We would have had this conversation and said, well, that's not going to work, so it would have never existed. And we would have said, we're going to have to work on something like this. We have to find something that's going to make it work. And we would have ended up this, and you could have decided if you're going to do it or not. So see, this is the problem we're in. The hardship here that we have, there isn't one, because it can go on the property without effect. This is by people smarter than me in this area that say it can meet the setbacks and it can affect the drainage. And that's the counsel that we're given by engineers. And if this had come up front, I know we would have had these discussions up front from the codes. It would not be here. So the problem is, the only reason we would do this is because you have it sitting there right now, and it's going to create a lot of work for you to have to change it. And it's just not something we can give a hardship for. I hate that this is going to happen, that you're going to possibly have to move it. I do. I really do. I hate saying no to anybody. I'm a yes guy. But in this one, I had to say yes to everyone we've said no to before that had the same compelling reason.
Okay.
They were going to have to do a little bit more work to get it done, and if we had had the permit up front, it would have never happened. And I hate that happens, that anyone puts up a fence or does any kind of work and doesn't get a permit, because we end up here in the same conclusion where we sit here and feel awful because we have to say it's not going to work and you're going to have to remove it or move it.
Okay.
I wish there was another option.
And
but-
I understand where you're coming from. We made the mistake, but part of the reason we put it where it was because of that berm. And then also, it's not a building. So non-permanent structures don't have to meet the setback. Am I wrong?
We've already had this discussion, Travis and I have, and it is permanent. It is mounted in a concrete slab.
It is not mounted. It is setting on top of the concrete pad. I mean,
Hearing over?
Mr.
sorry?
Peach, can I?
Hearing over? Have you closed the hearing or?
We're still in a public hearing.
I would like to ask Mr. Peach if you could clarify that for us.
You don't get to ask questions like that. You present your evidence, and then the board will make a decision. It's improper for that, especially at this stage. This is for you to get.
I just wanted a legal opinion on
This
it.
is for you to get, and I provide legal opinions, not to the public.
Okay, that's fine.
Anybody have any other questions for Mr. Webb?
I do not.
I mean, if we do, we can always come back.
Correct.
All right, thank you, Mr. Webb.
Thank you.
Is anyone else who would like to speak for or against? All right, seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals for discussion and a motion. So we'll start by seeing if anyone has any questions for Mitch or Jeff. In reviewing everything and hearing today, from all the information we've been given, based on the fact that it can meet all setbacks and not affect drainage, I am not an engineer, but I have an engineer telling me it can work. So therefore, I don't see the hardship. And I don't even want to go on the permit issue, because me mentioning the permit issue just said I hate folks to have trouble, ever, in anything. So I hate that it got here when it could have been stopped at the beginning, but that's really not the issue. The issue now, is there a hardship where it sits? And this, to me, says it isn't. And as far as what we're told, we've got a couple things that are in our town ordinance. One is this would be special privilege. This would be something that we have denied to other people in the same position, residents of the town. We have not approved one of these. So that is my issue on that, is special privilege usually kills anything. This board's been very consistent to make sure we're fair to all parties, okay? The other one is the fact that there isn't a topographic hardship based on the fact there is a place to do it. And that's my personal recommendation of denial, is because as far as we are in these 4 seats concerned, that is showing us it can be done, which eliminates the hardship, which is why we deferred last month, was to make sure we had time that if there is a hardship, we want to check it out and make sure everyone gets a chance to be sure it's right. This site plan shows something can be done, and it would have been stopped at the beginning had it gone through properly. So at this point, the hardship, we would be awarding that based on the fact that it's already there, and it's creating a problem. Someone has to do some work to move it, and we don't like to do that.
I agree.
Does anybody have any questions for anybody? Or if not, we'll take a motion or any further discussion.
Well, I'll make a motion to deny on lack of hardships.
All right, we have a motion to deny based on lack of hardship. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for denial. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion has been approved for the denial. Motion is denied. Moving on to new business.
Yeah, first one we have is a special exception. This is for Joey Ryan at 13179 Old Nashville Highway. The request is for a special exception to allow a daycare center at that address of 13179 Old Nashville Highway. Property is zoned PCD, which is a planned commercial district, and is approximately 1.51 acres in size. Property was rezoned from R1 to PCD in 2005, and at that time daycare centers were an approved use as a special exception within this PCD as part of the rezoning process. The site plan for this development was heard by Planning Commission on August 5th, 2021, and was approved with a condition that is reviewed by the Board of Zoning Appeals with that special exception request, which is why we are here tonight. Section 7.060B of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for authorizing special exceptions, and they are detailed below. A conditional use permit special exception shall be provided that the board finds that it is so designed, located, and proposed to be operated so that the public health, safety, and welfare be protected. Staff finds proposed business of a daycare center should not negatively affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Will not adversely affect other property in the area. Staff finds that the proposed use should not adversely affect other property in the surrounding area. Is within the provisions of special exception. When this property was rezoned PCD, it was for C4 uses. Daycare centers are considered special exceptions within the municipal zoning ordinance in the C4 district. Conforms to all applicable provisions of this ordinance in the district in which it is to be located, as well as the provisions cited in section 7.060 and 7.061, and is necessary for public convenience and location planned. Staff find that the site may be able to conform to all provisions of the municipal zoning ordinance as listed in criteria review section 7.060C. Prior to issuance of a special exception, the board shall make written findings certifying compliance with the specific rules governing individual special exceptions, 7.061, and that satisfactory provisions and arrangement have been made concerning all the following where applicable. Ingress and egress to the property. Access to the site will utilize an existing access point off Old Nashville Highway that is used by the other businesses within this commercial subdivision. Off-street parking and loading areas were required. Staff finds that the lot would provide sufficient space for off-street parking. Refuse and service areas. Refuse collection will need to be coordinated by the owner and developer. Utilities. This location does have all the necessary utilities available at the site. Screening and buffering, which is not applicable in this instance, being it is surrounded by other commercially zoned properties. Signs, if any, and proposed exterior lighting with reference to glare, traffic, safety, economic effect, and compatibility and harmony with properties in the district. Any proposed signage will have to meet the sign ordinance requirements. Required yard and other open space. Staff finds that this yard does have the necessary yard and open space to allow for a daycare center, as the lot size is just over 1.5 acres. General compatibility with adjacent properties in the district. Staff finds that the use would be compatible with adjacent properties, as there are other neighborhood commercial uses surrounding as well as residential uses. Number 9 is not applicable in this case. 7.061.7, which are special conditions for daycare centers. No facility shall be permitted on a zone lot unless it contains a minimum of 10,000 square feet or twice the lot area requirements of the zone district, whichever is greater. This property is just over 1.5 acres, which is larger than 10,000 square feet. All bulk and setback regulations are met. The site plan submitted to Planning Commission last month, earlier this month rather, showed the building meeting all applicable setbacks. The requirement of the accessory off-street parking regulations in accordance with Article 4, Section 4.010 shall apply. 39 parking spaces are required for this development and 40 are being proposed, so that requirement is being met. All the regulations of the state of Tennessee shall be met. The applicant states that they will meet all those requirements that are set forth by the state of Tennessee. All public utilities and sewage disposal shall be available to the site and shall be subject to approval by the Director of Utilities, and site and architectural plans for such facilities shall be approved by the Planning Commission, taking into account the above conditions as well as any other pertinent factors. All the utilities are available at the site and the plan was approved by the Planning Commission. The facility shall be located as to be compatible with the surrounding area and provide safety to those using such facility. This PCD is comprised of other neighborhood commercial style uses such as vets and offices. There are surrounding neighborhoods to which the service can be of assistance to as well. Fencing, screening, and landscaping shall be provided as appropriate to protect the surrounding area. This will not be required in this instance. Staff finds that the property provides sufficient space for the business of a daycare center. The proposed site plan was approved by the Planning Commission earlier this month on August 5th of 2021. There are other neighborhood commercial uses present surrounding this property as well as residential uses, so this use would not be out of place with the surrounding properties. This is the subject property. This is that existing entrance that does go back into the commercial subdivision. You do have the veterinary office back over here on this side and then the kennels further back. This is just a different picture standing on the property, kind of looking at the position of where the building would be located. Different angle. And this is just a site plan that was submitted to Planning Commission. It shows where it would be placed at the property and how it would utilize the ingress and egress to the site with what's already existing. That's all I got for you.
All right, thank you, Mitch. Anybody have any questions for Mitch before we open the public hearing? Okay. This time we'll close the BZA meeting and open a public hearing for anyone that would like to speak for or against the request. Please step up to the mic and give us your name and address, please.
Enoch Gerald with Huddleston Steel Engineering. Also have Mr. Joey Ryan, the owner of this property and developer. I think Mitch covered everything pretty well, but we're here to answer any questions that y'all may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Anybody have any questions? No questions. Anyone else that would like to speak for or against? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing and reopen the BZA meeting for discussion and motion. After reading all the staff report and the fact that there's space, it's been approved by the Planning Commission, just needs a special exception variance from us. I'm going to go ahead and personally recommend you guys that we do an approval on this special exception because everything seems to be in order, unless anybody sees anything different. We'll take a motion.
Make a motion to approve the special exception.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Whichever one y'all want to write down.
Right to this.
We got a motion and a double second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, we have a zoning variance for ETC Gymnastics.
Yeah, this is a zoning variance request of 50 parking space reduction for their 12,500 square foot gymnastics studio. The property is zoned C2 General Commercial and is approximately 2.07 acres in size. There is a private road owned by the Smyrna Housing Authority which may be utilized by these two parcels for access, but cannot be altered or used for parking. And it is unique in that it does split these two properties in half. The zoning ordinance parking requirement for recreation centers and gymnastics uses are 50% of the building capacity plus one space per every 2 employees. Based on the plans that were submitted by the applicant, this went to the planning commission. They also provided the building official with a detailed layout of the floor plan for the actual building. That's how this number of 304 people for the max occupancy was calculated. The applicant has also noted that there will be 15 employees using the site as well. Using the parking requirement, 160 spaces would be required, and the applicant is requesting for 110 for this development. A previous site plan has been submitted to Planning Commission, which does show 120 spaces being possible to be used at the site. But at this time, they are requesting for 110. ETC Gymnastics currently has 18,000 square foot facility in Murfreesboro with 92 parking spaces. So it's a larger facility and less parking spaces. Murfreesboro has a parking requirement for gymnastics studios of 1 space per 300 square foot of building space. If that requirement were used in this setting for a 12,500 square foot building, only 42 spaces will be required. As part of it, staff also took a look at other local municipalities to see what requirements they had for similar style uses. For example, Brentwood has 1 space per every 3 patrons at max occupancy or max capacity, and that would yield 102 parking spaces for this style of development. In Franklin, they're a little bit different. They have no listed requirement. It varies based on the style of use, so it's more so left for the staff to determine, Planning Commission to determine. Lebanon has a 25% of the maximum capacity plus 1 space per 4 employees, and that requirement would yield 78 parking space requirement in this instance. Mount Juliet has similar requirements to Smyrna in that 50% of max capacity plus 1 space for every 2 employees. Section 7.080D of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for variances not involving special flood hazard areas, and they are detailed below. Section 7.080 of the municipal zoning ordinance lists general requirements for zoning variance request. Those requirements and staff findings are as follows. The board shall not grant a variance unless it makes findings based upon evidence presented as it follows. The particular physical surroundings, shape, topographic condition of the specific property involved that would result in a particular hardship upon the owner is distinguished from mere inconvenience if the strict application of this ordinance were carried out must be stated. Staff finds that this is a unique circumstance in that there is a private road which does separate these two properties, which may only be used for access and it cannot be used for parking or altered to accommodate for more parking. The conditions upon which the petition for a variance is based would not be applicable generally to other property within the same district. Staff finds there is a unique situation regarding this property that may not be applicable to other property in the same district. The variance will not authorize activities in a zone district other than those permitted by this ordinance. Parking spaces are required for gymnastics studios, but the requirement is 50% maximum capacity, max occupancy, plus 1 space per 2 employees. Financial returns shall not be considered as a basis for granting a variance. The property owner has not identified financial returns as a reason for this request. The village difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having interest in the property after the effective date of this ordinance. Alleged difficulty or hardship was not created by the applicant. Granting the variance request will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. Staff finds that the variance request may not provide the applicant with special privilege denied to others, or denied by the ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings in the C2 district due to the unique circumstances with this property. The variance is the minimum that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. Staff finds that the requested reduction in parking is the minimum that will make possible the reasonable use of the property while accommodating for other items such as landscaping, drainage requirements, and utilities. The granting of the variance will not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the area. Staff finds the variance would not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the area. The proposed variance will not impair adequate supply of light and air to adjacent property, substantially increase the congestion in the public streets, increase danger of fire, endanger public safety, or substantially diminish or impair property values. Staff finds the variance should not have any of the above effects. Number 10 is not applicable in this instance. And in conclusion, staff finds that there is a unique circumstance present with the private road that divides these two properties, which does leave a space that cannot be developed or altered. There are many other surrounding municipalities in which this development, as presented, would meet the requirements for parking standards. So this is looking at the site from Old Nashville Highway. This is that private drive right here that leads back to the Smart Housing Authority. And this is the side that would be used as parking. They use this side of the road for their actual building. This is just a different angle looking at where the parking would be at and then where the building would be at. This is based on the site plan that was submitted to Planning Commission earlier this month, showing the structure of the building right here, and then you have all this parking right here, as well as parking surrounding the building on this side as well. That's all I got for you.
All right, thank you, Mitch. Anybody have any questions for Mitch before we go to public hearing? I mean, one thing I want to notice, everybody probably saw this in your packet, that private road separating the two. I mean, you can tell right there how many parking spaces would go in there if that did not exist. And that's the only way to get back to the property behind it. So that's the particular hardship they're speaking of, and that's about as in our face as it'll ever be, to actually see where it could be done if that didn't exist. So, just want to point that out before we do that. All right, this time we're going to close the BZA meeting and open up for a public hearing for anyone that would like to speak for or against the request. All right, if you'd state your name and your address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm Steve Steele with Huddleston Steel Engineering. Our offices are at 2115 Northwest Broad, just up the road here in Murfreesboro. I'm the civil engineer on the project. As Mitch mentioned, it was approved at planning. If you have any questions about the engineering, I'll be glad to address them. The owner, Mr. Ken Harris, is here. He's the owner-operator, and he has his chief operating officer with him if you have any operational questions. But we feel like this is a very reasonable request, and we ask that you approve it. Thank you.
Excellent. Does anyone have any further questions? I'd like to know if the three of you, I know your operations, but do you have any gymnastics moves you can display for us to make this more valid?
I notice you have a police officer, but is there a paramedic?
Yeah.
Town of Smyrna training, they're cross-trained, we can take care of any emergency that happens. Thank you very much, appreciate you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against? Okay, seeing no one, we will reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals. There's the picture. I see that there is a very particular hardship at the private roads separating these properties, which cannot be altered. Would easily be a spot to put these spaces. And if that weren't enough, we have plenty of examples of how many places surrounding us have a much lower amount of parking spaces needed for what we're doing here. So the hardship enough is okay for me, where I would say I would recommend that we approve this zoning variance. I don't know what you guys think.
I agree with that. I don't think they would ever need the extra. And based on my experience with similar, if not the same.
Your experience with gymnastics, do you have those two? 'Cause we can do a.
No.
We can see all four.
I'm in the same boat as he.
If everyone would hang out after the meeting, I think that would be pretty cool to work something up.
Keep the cameras going.
Attending said same type of locations. It's a big building with smaller volumes at a time, capacity-wise, because they're doing it in shifts, basically. Right. So.
Any other comments or questions? All right, we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve based on the hardship of the road running between the two parking lots.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the zoning variance based on the hardship. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the zoning variance is approved, and please wait till the meeting's over and we'll get something choreographed. Moving on to staff comments or other business.
I have nothing else for you.
No staff comments at this time. Thank you, and we stand adjourned.